Hey everyone, we're live. Yeah, we're live, Joe.
Are we?
Yes, I just went live.
That's weird.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it says on yours that we're live. It doesn't. Okay,
Yep.
there we go. Wow.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, so welcome to what the Economancer set up. So I'll allow the Economancer to introduce everything instead of me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure all of you have been following my last video that I made about Robert Reich and does trickle-down economics actually work? We had already, explored trickle-down economics in a video previously, but today I felt like for the second myth about tax cuts for corporations and the rich spur more economic growth, I would bring on my wonderful friend, the NyQuil Economist, Jeremy W. von Stippelhound III.
Comma, space, PhD.
Comma, yes, got to add that so
Yeah.
people can track you down.
I know, right? Everyone's be like, where the hell is Jeremy W. von Stippelhound III PhD? And they're not going to find me. It's going to be awesome. Because I do have a PhD, but von Stippelhound is not my last name. So.
And at this point in time, that's when people learned how to do reverse imaging.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I'm not going to say bad words this time.
We are live and beautiful. It's been posted all over the internet.
Sweet.
I even put it on my Twitter that all of 0 people follow.
Hell yeah.
I don't have anybody that follows me on Twitter because I hate Twitter.
Yeah,
I just go on there and post random stuff associated with my account of this. That's it. Because Twitter is literally the last place anyone ever wants to actually exist in because it's evil.
Yeah.
Evil. 100 or 200 characters is not a good way to start a conversation. And typing is really annoying.
Yeah, and Twitter's just awful in general. Twitter has like no redeeming value whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. But anyway, so we've wasted 2.5 minutes of people's time. Which y'all are welcome.
Let's get into some economicing.
Yes, economancy. Let's use the proper term. We are
whatever. I just do it on NyQuil.
Oh, look at this face, by the way. Before we would start, Robert Reich is an angry, angry man. I just want everybody to know that.
Tiny, angry man.
We are the Munchkins.
Like the Lollipop Guild. He escaped Oz.
I didn't say that, folks, so don't cancel me. Anyway, let's begin.
Turn the volume a bit. You may want to turn up the volume. It's really quiet.
Say that again.
Turn up the volume. It's really quiet.
Did we do this again? You have to give it permissions to make noise on your end. You got to go down here in that bullet point, click it.
And that bullet point. What bullet point?
The 3 dots. You got to click it. Yeah.
The Economancer full screen layout. That's all I say.
It doesn't say like give permissions for here. All right. We're gonna
wait. Hold up.
Okay. Why are you yelling at me?
So, I don't know.
Rude. Everybody who watches this is like, God, what boomers.
Yeah, right.
That's why I have a red and gray beard.
Yeah.
The host has unmuted your mic. Oh, okay. Cool. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do this.
I can just stop screen sharing and just send you the clip and you can screen share it and control the volume.
We'll just do it live, let it play through.
If they can't hear it, they won't.
Damn it. Okay, fine. Send me the link.
It's at 2:23, by the way.
All right.
I hope everybody's watching is just having a blast, laughing. Oh, it's like, oh wow, you guys are really crackpots here.
Yeah.
Great job.
Explain to me how you got a PhD
awesome.
again.
It definitely wasn't in online marketing.
Yeah.
Or anything of the sort.
Right. Okay, so I can do
anything better than you?
Well, yeah. All right, and then what do I hit? Share? No.
Yes. No. I don't know.
I don't either.
Share screen.
Do this. Okay. Oh. And it
we
was,
went through
what was
this
the time?
2:23.
Yeah.
2:23.
Yep. Okay. Share screen. Screen 3.
Need more booze.
Ruh-roh.
Oh, and you deleted it again.
Yeah, I know, because I forgot to share audio. There we go.
You're dead to me.
No, I'm just a boomer.
Das Boomer, yas.
Yeah. All right, so here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Obviously, you were never in.
Corporations and the rich spur more economic growth. Baloney. Not even Ronald Reagan's surging economic growth rate was driven by tax cuts. It was driven by low interest rates and humongous government spending. George W. Bush promised his 2001 and 2003 tax cuts would pay for themselves. Remember that? By spurring economic growth. Well, that didn't happen. A 2017 study led by one of Bush's former chief economists found that the tax cuts had no significant effect on growth. In fact, growth
All right, pause it.
Slowing to just 2.8.
Okay.
Woo! I'm going to go ahead and let you speak your piece on that one, but
you go ahead first.
So first of all, just so everybody's tracking, there's like 3 major arguments to be made about why we would ever cut taxes, right? Like, so first, like the most basic argument is like higher tax revenue may mean higher tax burden of firms. So the more taxes you have on the firms, this stifles the economic growth, and then lower tax rates will increase disposable income, increasing consumption, which stimulates aggregate demand, which in the short run, at least, stimulates economic growth. Second, pretty simple, cutting corporate tax rates have a way of making your country more with dealing with your comparative or absolute advantages, and being able to spur, foreign and domestic investment into your country, right? And the third, pretty simple, all long run growth is based on Trumpetarian or supply side factors. And so any exogenous shock that happens to those supply side factors stay permanent. So there's not a transitory shock that happens from tax changes. So whatever changes have happened previously, they're just compounded on by additional changes to the tax structure. Yeah. So I don't know if you got anything to say on that.
Let's see. I want to back this up a little bit and listen to what he says
Reagan's
here.
surging economic growth rate was driven by tax cuts. It was driven by low interest rates and humongous government spending.
Just this minor thing here. Robert Reich obviously wasn't. He hadn't escaped Oz yet during the Reagan administration. I guess he didn't click his heels together or whatever, because low interest rates. Does he not know what Paul Volcker did and who appointed Paul Volcker? Does he not know about that? There was major stagflation all throughout the late 1970s, and by the time Ronald Reagan came in. He appointed Paul Volcker as Fed chair. And Paul Volcker took some pretty aggressive measures. He raised interest rates when he came in. It basically kickstarted like this relatively short-lived recession from what, 81 to 82, I think. And then things began to recover after that. But we had stagnant economic growth all through the 70s. And then we got a recession. Joe, I'm going to allow you to answer this. What happens as we come out of a recession? What happens to economic growth, namely GDP growth, once we come out of a recession?
We're going to have a V-shaped recovery, right? Well,
yes.
At least we did back then.
Yeah. So you're going to have a huge economic boom after that. And when you've had slow economic growth all through the 1970s, thanks to really crappy policy, both fiscal and monetary, it's really not much of a surprise that you're going to have rather rapid economic growth in the years that follow. So I just wanted to speak my piece on that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from the modeling standpoint, like if we're worrying about like the impact on long run economic growth, right? So if we have this Schumpeterian model, which if anybody's ever watched any of my stuff, you know that I love Schumpeter. So what happens when we increase taxes or have any impact on the tax structure, right? So that's going to disturb the equilibrium, arbitrage conditions that drive household savings, firm entry, and investment decision-making processes, right? Because innovation can be seen as like a forward-looking investment behavior of the corporation sector. So a firm faces a trade-off between its pre-tax diversion of resources to benefit some future reduction in production, or it's going to maintain its operating profit. And so if we're increasing, you know, this idea that we're going to be increasing these corporate tax structures and raising dividend taxes, then you're going to see a reduction of that, right? That just makes economic sense, that if I'm going to face more taxes, then I'm going to do my best to hide the wealth that I'm creating because I don't want to pay taxes, because my taste for taxes is essentially zero, right? I don't want to pay any taxes, but I'm going to pay taxes up to a certain percent. And, you know, this was, I know everybody land-based fucking, everybody land-based, what was that guy's name? With the U shape in the middle. Oh man, I did an entire video on this and I've already forgot. Anyway, finding whatever the optimal tax structure is, it's zero, but for maximizing social welfare, it's obviously not going to be zero. But you know, this entire set of arguments, this entire set of beliefs is completely missed by this and trying to skirt the question and saying, oh, it was government spending that caused growth. Government spending doesn't cause growth. Government spending is benefited by economic growth, right? Like that just makes sense. You can't create something if there's nothing there to be motivating it. So that's just weird to point there. Yeah, and by the way, that study he cites doesn't say what he says it says. In fact, the actual whole statement is looking at different papers. It was done by the Brookings Institution, and it says ultimately we don't know the answer to whether it's beneficial or harmful to growth because there's a heterogeneous response. And so for him to go, oh, well, on this tax structure, it did zero. He was basically quoting the other works specific looking at this set of variables, but the paper itself draws no such conclusions. So he's a liar.
Well, so here is where I'm going to say, I'm going to make a point about Robert Reich that may or may not piss people off. I don't really know. I don't really care. I challenge anyone to go look at his CV and tell me what economic journals he's been published in. Furthermore, I challenge anyone to go look at his CV and tell me where he received a PhD in economics. And given he was labor secretary under the Clinton administration for like 3 months, I challenge you to find where he got his PhD with a primary field of specialization in labor economics.
That's a good question. Or public finance or public economics.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about taxes and you're not bringing in any of the public finance literature. You're not even willing to quote Piketty, Saez. Raj Chetty does a little bit. None of these guys are rock stars, and yet you can't bring yourself to quote them. That seems suspect. In my
Just
opinion.
a little bit. Yeah. And the funny thing is, spoiler alert, I'm just going to go ahead and reveal the surprise ending here. Robert Reich does have a doctorate, but it's a Juris Doctorate because he's a freaking lawyer. He is not an economist. I believe he has some master's training in economics, but it's like a law and econ master's. Chances are there is not very much like mathematical rigor that went into this stuff. So he probably doesn't understand how any of these studies are being conducted, let alone how to interpret the way the studies results need to be interpreted. He just doesn't have the training necessary to be able to make the claims that he claims. So just an interesting little observation / challenge there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything on his CV. He's got a master's from Oxford and his JD from Yale, but I don't see any of that.
Respectable schools, better schools than what I went to.
That's debatable, but
in the rankings.
Again, that's debatable.
Okay. Well.
I don't think people. It doesn't matter what school you come from. It matters about what you're doing coming out of
research you do. Yeah.
Right. So you can find somebody that nails at a bottom of the T50. I mean, if they, I don't know. This is again a part of my love for Stigler and stuff like that. I mean, Stigler pointed it out that there's a very big problem in a lot of our current sciences that, let's say me and you publish something and it's like world rocking. 10 years down the line, somebody basically replicates our work, but they come from Harvard. They're the ones that get like told how awesome they are, how great they are, despite the fact that they're not even the ones that come up with it. They were just doing a replication of something that we did. And so, Stigler's son actually named that phenomena after, I think it might have been the Parson effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why we used to call it what? Marshallian demand. They no longer call it that. It's now Walrasian demand because he's the guy who came up with it first, but it was Marshall for years.
Yeah.
Because Americans couldn't read not English.
Yeah. So yeah, one other funny observation after having gone through his CV very quickly. He typed his CV in Word.
Ew.
Boo. Type
Gross.
your CV in LaTeX. If it's not in LaTeX, it's garbage.
Garbage.
Garbaggio.
People, learn LaTeX. If you don't know what LaTeX is, just go to overleaf.com. It'll give you a brief intro. And then once you get good with that, then you can get like Tech Studio and stuff like that. But LaTeX is where it's at.
Yes, LATEX, like latex. So, well, if you want to know what it is, just do like the MIKTEX download, the MikTeX download, because if you just start trying to search latex, you're probably going to come across things that won't look very good and might surprise you and may not be safe for work. So, MikTeX, just search MikTeX. Go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, do that. Or just go to overleaf.com.
Yeah. And I hope Robert Reich is listening to this right now, because this is a point. This is an honest, constructive bit of criticism for your CV. Do it in LaTeX.
True story.
That is all.
Okay, so let's jump back into this.
Let's jump back in, because I don't have all night.
George W. Bush promised his 2000. That didn't happen. A 20 found that the tax
you lied.
had no
Liar.
significant effect on growth. In fact, growth declined, slowing to just 2.8% from over 3% during the Clinton years. The economic expansion under Bush was one of the weakest expansions.
Hold on. Are we not going to control for the fact that we were A, in a long war, and B, that we went through probably one of the biggest recessions? What is that?
The dot-com bomb of 2000?
Right. There was the dot-com bomb of 2000. Then we went to war. And then we what? Then we had the 2006, 2007 Great Recession.
Yeah, let's see how far back. Okay, so in all fairness,
just 2.8% from over 3% during.
Around
here is where that recession begins to kick in.
Well,
in all fairness,
I'm a little bit more ambivalent to that. I think the recession kicked off in 2006. I just don't think it showed up in
aggregate GDP data.
Well, again, it depends on the definition of a recession. So if we just maintain the normal, because so I'll give you
more consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth.
Right. Okay. So let me take a step back. So do you consider, I guess the lost decade of Japan to be a recession? Right. Some people would say no. Some people would say, well, yeah. I mean, there wasn't negative growth, but there wasn't growth.
It was sluggish recovery.
Right. So, I mean, that's why we had like Abenomics for 4 years and stuff like that. Like, okay, it's not. If we just maintain that as the recession, then yeah, I'll give you that. But if we kind of broaden the idea of what a recession is to kind of meet the needs, I guess you could say, of like the way we're looking at business cycles now.
I would still simply argue it's a sluggish economic recovery. It's not the pure definition of a recession, but that doesn't, just because we're not in a recession doesn't mean things are great. Like, you can have slow recovery, you can have slow GDP growth and not exactly be in a great situation.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, like I said, we're still like, we're at a consumption deficit because we're in the middle of a war, right? Like that has to be taken into account. I mean,
yeah, now, granted, the source is the American Economic Review. My assumption is, I should probably have read this paper before we had this conversation. My assumption is they controlled for that. They found ways to do that.
Oh,
if it's coming out of the AER, because somebody, whoever the ref is at the AER that read this paper, is going to be looking for precisely that, because that's going to be the first, like, if this is a conclusion from the paper, that's going to be the first criticism that the results get. Is, did you control for these other things? Did you orthogonalize all this stuff?
Sure. But again, none of this is cited. This is just a random graph that's shown. I could not find it other than saying that it was GDP growth weakest since World War II, which is true, but it doesn't take into account supply shocks that was being dealt with in 2005, 2006. I mean, I don't know if people remember, but we had the oil shock.
Yep.
Remember when the price of oil was like $120 a barrel? A gallon of gas was $4.50. I actually was almost hopeless.
I remember paying well over $5.
Yeah, well, North Carolina has cheap gas.
Yeah, Savannah, Georgia didn't, apparently.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like there was multiple problems that was going on with George W. Bush and his first and second terms. Just to strictly look at that and versus the Clinton, I mean, to me, that's not ceteris paribus. I'm really bad at Latin.
Ceteris paribus?
Yeah, I'm bad at Latin.
Yeah, ceteris paribus. Yeah, you can't just, they're apples and oranges.
Exactly. So I don't buy that argument, because we also don't know what that paper says.
Yeah.
Because we've already found him once to be lying about what a paper says.
Yeah. You know, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna back it up a little bit. Effects of tax changes on income growth.
That's not the same paper.
Oh, it's not.
No, that's what I'm pointing at. That paper that he has there, I have that pulled up. I've read that a few times. He absolutely misquotes that paper. Because that statement happens at, let me see.
Okay, here we go. Okay, well, let me just read the abstract. This paper examines how changes to the individual income tax affect long-term economic growth. The structure and financing of the tax change are critical to achieving economic growth. Tax rate cuts may encourage individuals to work, save, and invest, but if the tax cuts are not financed by immediate spending cuts, they will likely also result in an increased federal budget deficit, which in the long term will reduce national saving and raise interest rates. The net impact on growth is uncertain, but many estimates suggest it is either small or negative. Base broadening measures can eliminate the effect of tax rate cuts on budget deficits, but at the same time, they also reduce the impact on labor supply, saving, and investment, and thus reduce the direct impact on growth. However, they also reallocate resources across sectors toward their highest value economic use, resulting in increased efficiency and potentially raising the overall size of the economy. The results suggest that not all tax changes will have the same impact on growth. Reforms that improve incentives, reduce existing subsidies, avoid windfall gains, and avoid deficit financing will have more auspicious effects on the long-term size of the economy, but may also create trade-offs between equity and efficiency. All right.
Which becomes a political question when you're worrying about equity to efficiency, right? That's where you have to have a different type of bright line, because you can't, because in itself, since capitalism is amoral, you have to induct morality or nest it within something. And that's where like Piketty and Saez and those folks, they bring in Rawlsian theory of justice, which in itself is a separate nested model. So again, that's what I was getting at. That's what I'm saying. He misquotes that. The part that he's pointing at is, it's like, it goes, a variety of forms of evidence suggest that the impact on growth of these changes was negligible. A cursory look at growth between 2001 and 2007, before the onset of the Great Recession, suggests that overall growth rate was both mediocre. Real per capita income grew at an annual rate of 1.5% during the period, compared to 2.3% 1950 to 2001, and was concentrated in housing and finance, two sectors that were not favored by the tax cuts. There is, in short, no first-order evidence in the aggregate data that these tax cuts generated growth. Careful microeconomic analysis gives similar conclusions. Now, that's the first part. And then he goes into the narrative approach, which is, in my opinion, the best approach. That's where Romer and Romer 2010 used the narrative record from presidential speeches, executive branch documents, and congressional reports to identify the size, timing, and principle motivation for all major tax policy actions in post-World War II, blah, blah, blah. And they find that with the tax increase of 1% of GDP, lowering real GDP by roughly 2 to 3% over the next several years. So in the paper, he gives both the pros and the cons on both sides, and he just grabs something out of the con and goes, look, I'm right. Like, it's cherry picking, and it's
cherry pick, yeah. Wow. See, this is what happens, folks, when you let someone that does not have formal training in economics act like they're an economist.
You don't even have to have formal training in economics to not be an asshole at this point. Like, I don't understand what is going on, but it's mildly offensive to anyone who can read, because it's not like, well, I guess he just assumes that his viewers are just not going to read, or they're just going to read up until the point and just disregard everything that's on the pro side of it.
Well, he assumes that his viewers are just going to take his word as gospel and move on and go, well, Robert Reich said blah, blah, blah. And chances are people that are following him as religiously as I would assume some of these people are, I don't see themselves having an argument with people that would actually have like the academic background to go, oh, well, what did the paper say? Who wrote it? Where was it published? What does the paper assert? How do they estimate this? What's the theoretical model driving the empirical estimation? Like that conversation is probably not going to be had, so they're not going to be held to a whole lot of scrutiny.
Sure.
They can just keep parroting his BS because they'll take anything he says as gospel.
Right, exactly. And again, this is one of the motivations for why I shot the video in the first place, because the first argument, I know I had some backlash that come off of it, but for the most part, I didn't have any substantive critique of what I was saying on the economic side. Not a single person had anything to say on the economic side, because the economic argument was sound.
Yeah.
And again, even if you disagree with us, there still has to be some type of nested model, nested understanding of what's going on in this. If you value redistribution, that's fine. We can have that conversation about whether you value efficiency or equity. Cool. But to just flat out say that this side is wrong because it doesn't match my personal beliefs is ridiculous. There has to be something more.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I will continue playing. Significant effect on growth. In fact, growth declined, slowing to just 2.8% from over 3% during the Clinton years. The economic expansion under Bush was one of the weakest expansions since World War II. Donald Trump claimed his tax cut would be like rocket fuel for the economy and would spur annual growth of 3%. After its first year, in fact, growth declined. Finally, a recent study analyzing tax data spanning 50 years from 18 advanced economies found that tax cuts for the rich only benefited the rich and had no effect on job creation or economic growth. I, for one, am shocked.
Pause here. So that's it. That's it on this video. By the way, I have that paper pulled up. I want everyone to know. Go look this paper up. This is actually a really, really good paper. It's probably
Why don't we leave a link to it in the comments?
Oh, absolutely. Here, I'll actually. I don't know how we comment on it.
Just the post a comment. Bottom right.
Okay. No, that's only for private comments.
Oh, okay.
Only you can comment on that. Anyway,
I'll do it. I'll do a link in the description below.
Link it. Yeah. So anyway, just so everybody knows. All right. So first of all, this paper, this is a rather new paper. This came out in December 2020. And I'm going to read the abstract. This paper uses data from 18 OECD countries over the last 5 decades to estimate the causal effect of major tax cuts for the rich on income inequality, economic growth, and unemployment. First, we use a new encompassing measure of taxes on the rich to identify instances of major reductions in tax progressivity. Then we look at the causal effect of these episodes on economic outcome by applying a non-parametric generalization of the difference in differences indicator that implements Mahalanobis matching and panel data analysis. We find that major reforms reducing taxes on the rich lead to higher income inequality as measured by the top 1% share of the pre-tax national income. The effect remains stable in the medium term. In contrast, such reforms do not have any significant effect on economic growth and unemployment. Now, one of the major problems with this paper, and I mean, it's a beautiful paper. I want to touch this. Is first and foremost.
Careful. You don't want to touch it right now. The paper is really young.
True. Thanks for making that awkward. So first and foremost, their identification strategy is based on the variate-covariate structure, which I understand, but I am an economic structuralist, so not looking at the underlying economic structures and just looking at the variate-covariate structure. I don't know. I'm iffy on that. Again, I haven't got to dig down into their data, dig down into their actual matching mechanism, because they don't. It's not as in your face. Most of it, they're pulling off to the other paper that was done about it, and I haven't gotten to read that one. Anyway. So they try to add confounders as covariates, linking into the equation. And then they have a Bayesian matching algorithm that finds, the matching treatment trajectory for the causal effect of major tax cuts. Again, it's really cool. It's really awesome. But I don't. There needs to be more. Okay. So one of the big problems that I have with it is that the only variables that they have is income, which is top in personal income tax rate. And then they have the income for the effective tax rate on top 1% of wage earners. Then they have income and capital, top tax rate, dividend income. And then they have capital. So that's corporate tax rate income, capital, effective tax rate on capital, assets. So they got assets, top inheritance tax rate, revenues from assets, and then they have top 1% share of pre-tax national income, which I don't buy that. Harmonized unemployment rate, real GDP per capita, capital account openness, which, okay, trade openness, government expenditure, and then left vote share in last economy or in last election. So it's the model itself is predisposing you to almost find changes that happen within economies that are having a left-wing swing, in my opinion. So if you're finding an economy that has left-wing swing, so you're not controlling for the amount of regulation that's going to be happening into the economy. You're not controlling for the economic structures in the economy. You're not controlling for a lot of the issues that may come around with the institutions, especially if you're going to be working from the Acemoglu standpoint about directed technological change that's going to be coming from these institutions. And so all of that is missed. And then it does a counterfactual by looking at it saying, oh, well, this economy was prepping for this, and then they had the cut, and then the counterfactual is an economy that didn't have the cut during the same 5-year period, and we're looking at the overall differences in the economic growth. That's the difference in difference. But the problem is you're not controlling for what is the specificity that's aligning with that one of those countries, because of these 18 OECD countries, you're going to have heterogeneous responses in all of them based on, again, institutions, economic structures, and all of these things. And as beautiful as this paper is, none of it is technically controlled for, in my opinion. I think this is a very naive estimation. I think it's beautiful. I think built upon, this may go down as one of the best papers that you can imagine, but as it stands, leaving so little controlled for that it's just not there right now. That's my opinion.
I need to read it in detail before I can really have any major comments, because there's a lot that I.
So I'm gonna say this while you're thinking. So first of all, I don't know if anybody's aware of what's called the income inequality grease or sand the will hypothesis, but essentially there's a hypothesis that states in either direction. So if you have an increase in income inequality, you're going to have changes in your economic structure because you're going to lower social mobility, you're going to lower entrepreneurship, you're going to do a lot of these things that's going to actually impact the real economy through increasing the 1% share of the economy, right? This is something that I've worked on actually a lot. And so in this income inequality sand the wheel process, if you have increasing income inequality to the top 1%, then you're going to have decreasing economic growth. There's actually a bulk of literature here that points out to this. And though I may disagree with some of it, it is a persuasive argument. Now, in this analysis, they found that cutting taxes on the rich increases income inequality, but has no effect on growth or unemployment. Now, I'm confused here by looking at the actual metrics that they used, that I would assume that with this increase in income inequality, we would have, based on the lag structure of T to 5, based from the lag structure of T minus 1 into T plus 2 to T plus 5, that we would have some change in the economic growth because there's an increased elite capture. But there doesn't seem to be that either. It just seems to be stable. And for me, if you're having stability in something, that means A, that it's just a deterministic process that might be a thing, or B, that there's something that you're missing, because it shouldn't just stay the same, because you can build any DSGE model in taxes and see that, if you're looking at endogenous technical change, you're going to have impacts from, probably labor taxes, not as much because, you got the workers. But when you go to capital and dividend tax rates, you're going to see a huge difference, especially in dividends. I think every economic or every DSG model that I've seen that involves dividend taxes say you cut that. That's a big drop in GDP growth because you're removing a lot of the incentives, and then you're going to build something that's going to be incentive incompatible. Right. So I don't know how people feel about it, but when you're expecting some grease the wheel or sand the wheel outcome that comes from this income inequality growth, you would assume that would show up in the economic growth data. And if we're having no effect on that, that brings about some ideas that we really need to look at. And then looking for the counterfactuals, I don't see any controls in recessions. So during the time, a lot of tax cuts, especially like the Bush tax cut, that was in response, that was a counter-cyclical response to, a recession. I think the Donald Trump tax cut, one of the biggest criticisms that got levied was that it wasn't a counter-cyclical tax cut, right? It was in the middle of a hot cycle. You probably should have increased taxes based on, old school Keynesianism for budget balancing. But that didn't happen either. So again, we would assume that there is going to be some type of behavioral response from changes in taxes. And there didn't seem to be one. And then last, in this paper, you could have done each one of these countries individually in a difference time series. You didn't have to do it in panel. The only thing the panel is doing is allow you to do the counterfactuals. So this like heterodox, and I don't want to say that it's heterodox because it's like, oh, it's bad. I mean, heterodox is, I don't know many other papers that are using this effect very often. So it's something new. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I don't know a whole lot of other papers that are using this method. Typically, something like this, you're going to do PVARs or DSGEs or something like that. So this is kind of a new method that, you take it for what it's worth. And then I'm kind of worried about the covariate matching because I don't know if that's, again, I'm an economic structuralist or an institutionalist, whatever you want to call it. I think matching on those would have been better than matching on the covariate structure themselves to run the counterfactual. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, the paper points to medium and short term, or medium and short run fluctuations, and it doesn't say anything about long term growth. To do something long term, again, Panavar, I mean, at minimum, you could have done a cross correlated effects estimation, depending on your T and N ratios here, and then that would definitely give you your long term responses and elasticities that would probably make a better overall persuasive argument rather than this paper, which, again, it's a great paper. It does a lot of beautiful things, but I don't think that the end result is persuasive, and I damn sure don't think it's persuasive enough, because I don't think Robert Reich has any clue at all about what is going on in this paper. And I don't know very many economists that might have a strict idea of what's going on in this paper. It's covariate matching, running into it's an advanced paper, and it needs work. It needs a better control structure, but
there is something I noticed. Table A2 on page, looks like 29, covariates and data sources. They got all these little indicators here. What's the only thing that they've got to capture the political behavior within the economy? There's one variable: left vote share in the last election. That's it. Nothing about political stability.
Exactly.
Nothing about any sort of party cohesion within every single party here. There is nothing about any sort of perceived instability for the future here, which something tells me if you were to control for something like that, you might not see as much of an increase in the top 1% share.
Absolutely. I mean, that was Lipset's argument in the 1960s, right? They always tell you don't read stuff before the 1960s. I mean, we had figured this out a long time ago. Why do taxes change? Because we have the median voter rule, right? The median voter law. That's the way it goes. You're trying to capture the taste of the population to change taxes, and that happens through a political process, which again, all of this is it is an economic
case. You said this in one of your previous videos, and it makes a ton of sense. And thinking about that and applying it to this, it's like, geez, so let's say, all right, I'm super rich, Donald Trump's president, huge tax cut. Am I going to want to hoard all that money, or am I going to want to invest it? If I'm not certain Donald Trump's going to be around in the next couple of years, because I'm worried he's going to get voted out of office, and whatever clown comes in is just going to completely undo a lot of that tax policy. Am I really going to want to do a whole lot with that right now? Or am I going to want to wait and see where things go, see where the political land lies in the next couple of years?
Absolutely. That credibility constraint, like I said, that is the most untalked about constraint that happens in public finance and public economics in general. And people just assume that it just goes away. People don't expect or know what's going to happen somewhat in the future. I mean, think about it this way. I know everybody thinks about the cabal, which they called themselves that. It's not me. The cabal of academics and activists and business personnel prior to the 2020 election, all working together. If I'm in the know, for whatever extent, I am definitely going to be hedging my money on this cabal to beat out Donald Trump if I think that they're well connected enough, especially in the social media landscape.
Yep.
Like you're kidding me if you think that I'm going to dump money into something. No, I'm going to do everything I can to pay down debt, use all of this money as quickly as possible because I know in the next 5 years it's not going to be there. So I need to use it as much as possible, unless you assume that the power structure and the hegemon is going to stay the same, but you know that it's not.
No.
So there you go.
Yeah. Well, anyways, on that, I would actually like to do a little bit of empirical analysis to try to refute some of what he's saying here, which is definitely going to need to be done in another video. So I personally have, I feel that we have discussed enough. We've also gone 50 minutes, well exceeding the average attention span of any viewer. Is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think we hit it pretty good. I would absolutely love to do that. You know, I think we should have a live stream where you can go through R and do some time series and like give a basic breakdown on that. And you know, I have a lot of data that I've been working on with tax burden as it stands, tax burdens and economic growth. Maybe we can just go through that. You can go through yours. I can go through mine on Stata and stuff like that. And we can, you know, just teach people how to use R and Stata.
I wouldn't even want to go that far. I would just go like, hey, look, this is, I mean, I would approach it from more of a business cycle standpoint on some of this, but I would go like, I mean, the frequency at which Reich is trying to extrapolate these studies from is almost at a business cycle frequency. It is not at a long run growth and development, like every 10, 20, 30 years sort of thing. It's like over, you know, over these presidencies, because Republicans equal bad. I could think of a couple of things I could try to do. Very, very, very simple VARs I could run. And I'd be curious to see what I find. And, you know, if I find something that suggests something along the lines of what he's saying, I'm more than willing to admit it. Admit that I was wrong, but I'm not certain I will. But if I do, I will be honest and admit, hey, I was wrong.
Sure, absolutely. I think that'll be a great idea.
Yeah,
I don't have anything else. I had a blast.
I did too, brother.
I will hit you up after the fact.
Yep.
I think right now we have one watching, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, hello to whoever is watching. Thank you for watching our video.
Yeah.
There will be a more structured, more research-based video coming. I don't know. What do you think? A week or so?
Sure. Whatever fits your fancy, homie.
All right. Cool. Works for me.
All right. Don't forget to cut the stream off.
I won't.
Because I got to get
the end broadcast, correct?
I would assume.
Okay.
Boomer.
Well, I am ending broadcast. So Boomer's out.